Everyone's got problems. This is one of those universal truths that simply cannot be denied. But as writers, we can leverage this to make our stories, and more importantly, our characters, even better. For anyone who's new to the channel, my name is Seth. I'm a fantasy author. I like making YouTube videos, and I really need a haircut. That's been bothering me for some time, but I am going to resolve that problem tomorrow. In the meantime, I would love to talk to you about writing, specifically writing strong characters, and a specific paradigm or way of looking at our characters that can supercharge our writing. Like we established at the beginning of this video, everyone has problems, including our characters. Now, most writers understand that our main characters have problems because that's how we're taught to put plots together, right? You have a character, that character has a problem, and the story is them resolving the problem over time, usually including other people. Unfortunately, a lot of times these stories fall flat because too often we only write the main character with problems. Everybody else around them is sort of accessory to whatever problems that the main character has, and so they end up falling flat. They're just not believable because everybody has problems. And so if you see someone who doesn't have problems, your mind immediately goes, yep, that's not real. In order to grab the attention of a reader, a character needs to be fleshed out. They need to be believable. They need to have problems. Thankfully, there's an easy fix for this. Just give your characters problems. All of them. Not all of the problems. I mean, yeah, do give them all of the problems because that makes for good writing, but give all of your characters problems. Not just your main character, but all of your side characters too. Now, hold on. I can literally feel some of you starting to stress out already. I am not saying that you need to make every character super detailed or know everything about every one of your characters' inner lives or make a super complicated, intricate web of interactions between all of your characters. I'm just saying that you need to give them problems. So let me give you 3 simple principles to follow that are going to help you do this, help you give you those side characters problems, help you flesh out all of the characters in your story. The first is to understand that frustration can be the best micro conflict. Frustration is great because it humanizes us. The fact is that life doesn't go our way most of the time. In fact, it's probably more accurate to say it never goes our way completely. Sometimes things go well for us, but nothing is ever quite perfect. And so when we read about a character who doesn't seem to struggle at all and life seems to be perfect for them, we just don't believe it. Because we know experientially that life isn't perfect. And how does that imperfection normally manifest itself? Well, it normally manifests itself through frustration. And so in writing, frustration can be one of the best things you can do to create problems for your characters. Now, I used a term earlier that I think is really important, micro-conflict. We don't need big conflicts. We don't need giant problems that take chapters and chapters to resolve. No, what we actually want is small conflicts that mirror day-to-day regular life moments. And frustration is great because frustration can be resolved or appear to be resolved in a single scene. It doesn't take a long time to resolve, but it can always come back up again because often when we express frustration in real life, we are not actually dealing with the core problem that is causing us frustration. And your characters are going to be just like this too. So if your main character is busy doing something, you can show the characters around them expressing frustration at the way things are happening, expressing frustration at the way the MC is handling things, or expressing frustration that their life is not going the way they want it. You can also resolve those conflicts. You can show growth in them, even if it's very minute. Readers are smart. They're going to pick up on these subtleties. But if those subtleties aren't there, they'll realize that too. The second principle we want to apply is showing small victories and defeats. Small victories and defeats can allow us to control very, very tightly the emotional flow of a story. Whenever we write a scene, our reader is going to bring the emotion that they were feeling in the last scene into the new scene. And while this is often good because that's what allows us to build to a crescendo, it can also be a problem because our stories don't just build, sometimes they fall too. Sometimes we want the emotion to jump quickly Sometimes we want it to be a slow swell. But how do you do that? How do you figure out ways to adjust your reader's emotions as they're reading through your story? Well, you can never do it exactly because your reader is going to bring their own world building into your story. They're going to read it the way they want to read it. But what you can do is you can give small hints and clues as to what you want the general flow of the emotion to be in your story. And we do this through showing victory and defeat. Now, let me give you a really great example. Let's say you're about a third of the way through the book and your MC's at a high point and they've just made a monumental achievement. Maybe they got on stage for the first time and it went great. They got a standing ovation. Showing them walking off stage and into the next scene and being so excited about it and stubbing their toe is showing a very small defeat. Yes, they've just had this great, big, awesome experience. But guess what? Stubbing your toe is going to get you depressed real fast. It hurts. And so your character now has to deal with this defeat. And what that will do is it will also draw your reader back down to the level of emotion that your MC is feeling. You might also use that to expose some of the other problems that your MC has, because defeat and victory have a way of magnifying the flaws that we have. How we respond to things shows who we are. And so having your character, either your main character or your side characters, respond to victory and defeat in different ways are going to reveal more about the depth of their character, more about their flaws, more about their virtues, and it's going to just give a better rounded, more realistic sense to your whole world. And finally, the third principle that we want to follow is that the people around your main character are a signal to your reader to how they should respond. You can use this in two ways. You can use this to directly signal, which is sort of the most blunt way, right? If you have a character who is thinking about doing something heroic and somebody comes alongside them and says, of course you're going to do it. You're the hero. That is a direct statement and sort of a blunt statement to the reader. This is how you should feel about the main character. This is the hero who's going to do the thing. But we don't have to be blunt. We can also do this more subtly. So a great example of this is, let's say you are setting a scene where your main character is looking out over a city wall at a sieging army. He's got a small band of men who are going to help him break through enemy lines so that they can get reinforcements to break this siege. Now imagine two different versions of this scene. Let's say the main character walks down from observing the enemy army and he finds all of the men, all professional soldiers, all ready to go. Their gear's in shape, they are hyped, they are ready to do this, and he joins in with them. What sort of feeling are you going to get? Well, based on how the characters around him react to his arrival, that's going to tell you how you should feel about him. And so you might get the sense of brotherhood or camaraderie or facing a hard thing together. And you might get some of the emotions that go along with that. But now let's contrast that. Let's say your main character walks down from that same wall and finds nobody is ready. All of the soldiers are finding excuses to do other things. They're all fearful, but there is no choice but to go. So your MC starts to speak to them, starts to encourage them. And we get to watch them go from frightened to encouraged to courageous. All of a sudden, that tells us something else about the main character. We go on that same journey with those side characters, and we learn new things about our main character. We learn how to feel about him. And the thing is that whether you intend it or not, that's always going to happen with everything you write. As a reader, we are going to take cues from the environment of what we're reading. We're going to notice those little frustrations. We're going to notice how they're resolved. We're going to notice the small victories and defeats that stack up over time to give us the pervading sense of how we should feel about the story. We're going to pay attention to what the side characters feel about the main character and how they respond to the main character. And from that, we're going to build our understanding of the identity of the main character. So if you understand those three things, if you understand how to use frustration, small victories and defeats, and your side character's responses, you can craft the story that you want to craft. You can create realistic characters, even if you're not putting huge amounts of detail into them. Above all, our goal is for our characters to be real. Whether they're the main character or a side character, it doesn't matter. We want them to feel like real people. But just like real people, it's also important not to overstate it. That blunt telling to a reader of how they should feel isn't effective, because it feels bad as a reader to simply be told, this is how you should be reading this story. So rather than have your characters come right out and say they have problems, they should point to them indirectly, with the way they act, with the way they look, and with what they say.